In palace dramas, power is almost never loud. It lives in the pause before a command, in the glance that destroys a rival without raising a voice, in the smile that looks gentle until you realize it just changed someone's fate. That is why palace drama is such a dangerous genre. Because this world does not belong to actors who only look good in robes. It belongs to the ones who can make the court feel like a battlefield without ever drawing a sword. The ones who can sit on a throne, stand in silence, or speak one line, and suddenly the entire harem, the entire palace, the entire story bends around them. And when the conversation turns serious about men who truly owned palace intrigue, three names rise immediately: Wallace Huo, Nie Yuan, Kevin Cheng. Wallace Huo feels like imperial coldness wrapped around buried regret, especially through Ru Yi's royal love in the palace. Nie Yuan feels like authority sharpened into pressure through story of Yangshi Palace, and later, the legend of Howlin. Kevin Cheng feels like aristocratic calculation and emotional temptation through Scarlet Heart's unforgettable Eighth Prince. Three men, three kinds of royal danger. Three performances that turned palace politics into obsession. But when the question becomes brutal, who is the true king of palace drama acting, the answer gets dangerous very fast. The first mistake people make with palace drama rankings is assuming this genre is just historical romance with nicer costumes. It isn't. Palace drama is war conducted through posture. It is not about who looks best in a crown. It is about who can make the crown feel heavy, who can make a court scene feel dangerous even when no one raises their voice, who can suggest jealousy, control, desire, humiliation, regret, and power all in the same glance. That is why Wallace Huo, Nie Yuan, and Kevin Cheng belong in a conversation like this. All three are memorable in palace settings, but they dominate those spaces through completely different energies. Wallace Huo feels like imperial erosion. In Ru Yi's royal love in the palace, he played the Qianlong Emperor, and the series itself became one of the major palace dramas of 2018, streamed more than 18.9 billion times according to its profile. His performance is powerful because the emperor is not written as a clean villain or a clean romantic lead. He becomes weaker, more suspicious, and more emotionally corrosive over time. Nie Yuan feels like authority sharpened into pressure. He is also strongly tied to the role of Qianlong Emperor through story of Yangshi Palace, and his profile explicitly notes that he gained renewed recognition from that hit palace drama. He later reinforced his palace-era credibility through The Legend of Howlan as Lu Bue, and Kevin Cheng feels like aristocratic temptation. In Scarlet Heart, he played the Eighth Prince, one of the most memorable and emotionally manipulative royal men in modern palace drama memory, in a series that became a defining Qing court time travel romance. So, this ranking is not about who wore robes most beautifully. It is about four harder things: palace aura, emotional threat, screen authority, and how deeply they embody court power. Because the best palace drama actors do not just enter the palace. They make the palace feel more dangerous because they are there. If there is one actor in this ranking who makes palace drama feel like love rotting from the inside, it is Wallace Huo. What makes Wallace Huo so powerful in this genre is that he understands something many actors never fully master. In palace drama, cruelty is rarely explosive at first. It is gradual, intimate, almost elegant. And that is exactly why his performance style fits this world so well, because Wallace Huo does not dominate the palace through obvious aggression. He dominates through deterioration, through the feeling that a man who once looked capable of love, loyalty, and tenderness is slowly being eaten alive by suspicion, pride, power, and the terrible logic of the throne. That is far more frightening than simple villainy. A villain can be hated easily. But a ruler who decays in front of you while still believing in his own authority becomes something much more tragic and much more dangerous. That is where Wallace Huo becomes unforgettable. In palace drama, the emperor cannot just be powerful. He has to be emotionally consequential. The women around him, the alliances around him, the atmosphere of the court itself, all of it has to change depending on how he looks, whom he doubts, whom he favors, and what he refuses to understand. Wallace Huo is very good at making that kind of emotional authority feel suffocating. He does not need to raise his voice often. He can wound a scene by cooling it. He can make disappointment feel more lethal than anger. That is exactly why his presence in Rui's royal love in the palace hits so hard, because the role demands more than charisma. It demands corrosion. The audience has to believe not only that this man can rule, but that his rule can poison love itself. Wallace Huo makes that believable. He begins from a place of imperial composure, then slowly lets insecurity, ego, and distance harden into something devastating. And because he does not overplay the descent, the damage lands harder. The emperor does not become monstrous in one dramatic turn. He becomes monstrous by degrees, which is far more painful to watch. That is palace drama acting at a very high level, because the best actors in this genre understand that the court is not only political, it is psychological. Every ceremony hides humiliation. Every favor hides calculation. Every silence hides fear. Wallace Huo knows how to hold all of that in his face. He can look regal and depleted at the same time, desired and unreachable at the same time, powerful and spiritually hollow at the same time, and that complexity matters. Because a weaker actor might play an emperor as simply stern, cruel, or tragic. Wallace Huo plays one as emotionally corrosive, the kind of man whose failures of love become inseparable from his exercise of power. That gives his palace drama image enormous weight. He is not just a ruler inside the story. He becomes part of the palace's emotional weather. That is why he is such a serious contender in this ranking. Because if Nie Yuan gives palace drama sharper pressure, and Kevin Cheng gives it seductive calculation, Wallace Huo gives it something slower and perhaps even more painful. The feeling that absolute power does not only destroy other people, it destroys the person who holds it. And when an actor can make that destruction feel this intimate, this believable, and this haunting inside the walls of a palace, he stops being just a man in imperial costume. He becomes the kind of emperor the audience remembers with anger, pity, and dread all at once. If Wallace Huo makes palace drama feel like love decaying into poison, then Nie Yuan makes it feel like authority pressing down on the room in real time. That is what makes him so dangerous in this genre. Because Nie Yuan does not play palace men as distant ornaments of power. He plays them like men who already understand what power costs, and have decided they can still afford it. That creates a very different kind of tension. With some actors, the emperor is symbolic first and human second. With Nie Yuan, the human intelligence inside the power is always visible. You can feel calculation, appetite, control, irritation. Even when he is still, the performance gives the impression that he is already ahead of everyone else in the room. That is exactly why he works so well in palace intrigue. His profile makes this connection very clear. He is explicitly noted as having gained renewed recognition with his portrayal of the Qianlong Emperor in Story of Yanqi Palace, the 2018 Palace hit that redefined how many viewers saw him. That matters because renewed recognition is not just a polite phrase. It means the genre put him back at the center of public attention in a way that felt undeniable, and then he carried that momentum into The Legend of Haolan as Lu Bu Wei, a role built on cunning, ambition, and court manipulation. At that point, it stops looking like a lucky fit and starts looking like a real palace drama identity. What makes Nie Yuan especially formidable in this ranking is that his palace aura feels active. Wallace Huo corrodes the emotional climate of the court slowly. Kevin Cheng seduces it through aristocratic ambiguity. Nie Yuan exerts pressure more directly. He feels like the man whose attention can change the air immediately. There is a sharpness to his court presence, a sense that he is always measuring, always testing, always deciding whether the person in front of him is useful, dangerous, or already finished. That is one of the strongest traits an actor can bring into palace drama, because the genre runs on hierarchy made personal. The audience needs to feel that one glance from the throne can become either favor or disaster. Nie Yuan makes that believable. There is also something else working strongly in his favor. He feels historically durable. He is not only memorable because of one palace hit. His profile is full of historical and period work, from Three Kingdoms to Journey to the West, then later Story of Yangshi Palace and The Legend of Howlin, which means he does not enter ancient settings like a modern actor borrowing old clothes. He enters them like someone the genre already knows how to frame. That matters. Palace drama is less forgiving than people think. If the actor feels too contemporary under the costume, the illusion breaks. Nie Yuan rarely has that problem, and that is why Nie Yuan belongs so high in this top 3. He represents palace drama power at its most pressurized. The actor who can make court politics feel immediate, dangerous, and intensely human all at once. He does not just sit inside imperial hierarchy. He makes you feel it. If Wallace Huo makes palace drama feel poisonous, and Nie Yuan makes it feel oppressive, then Kevin Cheng makes it feel something even more seductive, dangerous, because it is intelligent enough to look gentle. That is what makes him so unforgettable in this genre. Because Kevin Cheng does not dominate palace stories through brute imperial force. He dominates through refined calculation. Through the smile that sounds sincere until you realize it was strategy. Through the warmth that may be real, but is never separate from ambition. In palace drama, that kind of performance is lethal. It is not the obvious tyrant the audience fears most. It is the man who looks emotionally available while moving 3 steps ahead of everyone in the room. And that is exactly why his 8th prince in Scarlet Heart remains so iconic. That role did not depend on overwhelming power in the conventional sense. It depended on charm, intelligence, emotional ambiguity, and the ability to make the audience understand why someone could fall for him while also sensing the danger underneath. Kevin Cheng was exceptionally good at that balance. He never played the prince as flatly manipulative, and he never softened him into harmless romance either. He kept both truths alive at once. That is palace drama sophistication. Because the best court performances are not built only on status. They are built on the ability to make politics feel personal. Kevin Cheng understands that instinctively. His palace men do not simply want power in an abstract way. They want love, survival, position, dignity, and victory, all tangled together so tightly that one desire poisons the next. That complexity is one of the reasons his screen presence in this genre lands so hard. He does not just stand in the court, he reads it, he navigates it, he tempts it, and that is where he becomes so dangerous in this top 3. Because Wallace Huo gives you the emperor whose soul corrodes under power, Nie Yuan gives you pressure and command. But Kevin Cheng gives you something more psychologically slippery. The royal man who can make ambition look romantic for just long enough that the audience almost wants to believe in him too. That is a very hard illusion to pull off. It requires beauty, yes. It requires aristocratic poise, yes. But more than anything, it requires the actor to understand how to weaponize emotional credibility. Kevin Cheng does. His court presence feels smooth, elegant, and controlled, but never empty. There is always thought moving underneath it. That inner movement makes even quieter scenes feel alive with consequence. And that is why he belongs so high in this ranking. He represents palace drama power at its most seductive and politically intelligent. The actor who can make royal strategy feel intimate, desirable, and quietly devastating all at once. In a genre built on betrayal dressed as devotion, that kind of performance is almost impossible to forget. So in the end, the real question is not who wore the most beautiful robe, who looked the most regal on a throne, or who simply appeared in the most famous palace drama. It is who most completely understood the true language of Kung Jiao, and that language is never spoken directly. It lives in controlled breathing, in delayed anger, in affection used as strategy, in silence, heavy enough to feel like a verdict. That is why palace drama acting is so difficult. The genre does not reward actors who only know how to be grand. It rewards actors who know how to make power feel personal, dangerous, and emotionally expensive. And when you place Wallace Huo, Nie Yuan, and Kevin Cheng side by side, what becomes clear is that each of them rules this world in a completely different way. With Kevin Cheng, the power is seduction sharpened into calculation. He represents the palace man who knows that the most effective form of control is not fear alone, but emotional confusion. He makes ambition look intimate. He makes strategy look romantic. And that is why his presence in palace drama lingers so strongly. He does not dominate the court like a tyrant. He infiltrates it like a mind. That makes him unforgettable. But compared with the two men above him, his power feels more elegant than overwhelming, more psychologically lethal than structurally dominant. With Wallace Huo, the power is corrosion. He turns palace drama into something deeply tragic by showing how authority can poison love from the inside. His emperor is not simply a ruler. He is a man whose weakness, pride, loneliness, and suspicion slowly deform everything around him. That is one of the hardest things an actor can do in this genre because it requires patience. The performance cannot peak too early. The cruelty has to bloom slowly enough that the audience feels its damage spreading through the palace like a sickness. Wallace Huo does that brilliantly. He gives the palace emotional decay. He makes the throne feel like something that devours the person sitting on it. But when all of these strengths are placed side by side, Nie Yuan still feels like the strongest answer. Because among these three, he most fully embodies what palace drama power looks like when it becomes immediate, visible, and impossible to escape. That is the difference that puts him on top. Kevin Cheng may be more seductive, Wallace Huo may be more tragic, but Nie Yuan brings the one quality that often defines the most unforgettable palace men: pressure. He walks into court scenes like someone who already knows the hierarchy belongs to him. He makes rank feel active. He makes power feel like something pressing down on every person in the room. That is why his performances in palace settings land so hard. He does not simply occupy authority. He radiates it in a way that changes the whole emotional climate of the scene. One look from him can feel like judgment. One moment of favor can feel dangerous. One pause can feel like punishment.